Hello, and welcome back to Under 1000. Each episode, I read you a piece of super short fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading you a story called Assigned. Devinter gazed out through the window and over the garden, waiting for her father to join for dinner. She knew that this was a conversation she needed to have with him tonight, before she returned to school, but the urgency didn't make the prospect any more enjoyable to her. She'd only realized the reality of the situation herself a few months ago. At first, she had tried to deny it, to herself, to her friends, to everyone around her. However, slowly it became clear that this was not something which was going to go away. In the end, she'd come to love it, really. Perhaps privately and secretly, but love it all the same. After all, it was a gift, a power that she possessed, no matter who among her peers secretly considered her a freak or a heretic or an abomination to the goddesses. "Where's your head off to, then?" she heard her father say distantly as he returned to the table. "If you're not careful," he continued, "the fairies will carry you right off to another world." She smiled thinly, refocusing her attention on the food. "Come on now, let's eat," her father said kindly, dishing some broth into her bowl by way of an appetizer. "I've made all your favourites for tonight. You know I've got to spoil you while there's still time left for it." Grabbing at a hunk of bread and dipping it into the thick and flavoursome broth before her, Devinter pondered on how best to raise her announcement before the meal was out. She should wait until they had both had their fill, she reasoned. No use talking, or perhaps even arguing, on an empty stomach. As they worked their way together through the stacks upon stacks of dishes he'd prepared, Devinter and her father made light conversation. The topics were inane enough, they both knew it, but she could feel the warmth and affection in his voice, in the air, and it said volumes more about his love for her than the discussion of events in the village ever could. She sat happily in that affection, drinking it up, wondering and fearing that it may be the last time she felt it. Eventually, as the meal came to its natural conclusion, Devinter realized it was time for her to speak up. She waited as her father ate the last few morsels left on his plate, and then turned to face him. "Papa," she began slowly, fearful of the very words coming out of her mouth. "There's something I need to tell you. You must promise to trust me, to believe me, and try not to be angry with me. I promise I'm telling you the truth, though you may find it difficult to comprehend." Her father looked at her, confused and with a slight smirk on his face. She realized that despite the severity of her tone, or perhaps maybe because of it, he seemed to think of this as some kind of prank or silly joke on her part. Pushing the thoughts aside, she carried on anyway. "Papa, there's something I've discovered about myself these last few months at the school," she said softly, more afraid than ever now. "As you know, they're really helping me grow into being the young mage I was always meant to be, and, well, there's something that's come up that has taken everyone, even me, by surprise." Her father looked at her more seriously now. She could see it dawning upon him that perhaps this was not a joke after all. Her nerves rattled around inside her with increasing severity, but she knew she was past the point of return. There was no heading back now, she thought to herself, so it's time to reveal the truth. "The thing is, Papa, and I know you won't like to hear this, but I am..." She paused, still hesitating over what she was about to say. "I am a wielder of all the elements." "What?" Her father suddenly snapped back at her. "Don't be silly, Devinter, that's just not possible." Tears sprang to her eyes, quickly, painfully. She'd been expecting this reaction all along, and yet it still surprised her with an immense wash of sadness. "Papa, it is. I am able to wield all 4 elements. It's the truth, I swear it." "But Devinter, my love," her father replied, with a saccharine and patronizing tone she'd never heard him use before. "Everybody knows that the great goddesses assign each of us command over only one of the elements when we're born. None of us can change that, and certainly none of us can wield more than one. How could you possibly wield them all?" I don't know, Devinter replied quietly as tears began to fall from her eyes. But it's the truth, Papa, I swear to you. I can even prove it to you before I leave if you want. And the headmistress says there have been others like me before. They're rare, but they exist. Maybe we just don't hear about them is all. I don't know about this. How can I accept it? Her father said, shifting slowly but perceptibly from sweet platitudes to a fiery anger. What you're saying goes against the teachings of the goddesses. It's against everything this land and its people stand for. Can my own daughter really know more than all the high mages of the Covenant? She didn't know how to respond. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she sat still, waiting for his final verdict, waiting to see whether he could accept the truth of her, or if he was forever stuck in the traditions of the land. She knew in herself that there was nothing wrong with her, but now she could only hope that he would see this too someday. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, Nictate, and the Sharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your preferred streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for another piece of super short fiction.